Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Knee Slappin' K-Pop podcast. I'm Sammy. I have here Kayla.
Hello.
And Maria.
Hello, hello, hello.
And we are here for our long-awaited apology episode. We
Yeah.
don't do
Yeah.
apology
Yep.
episodes often.
No.
We never do apology episodes. But
No.
over the past couple of
Once
years,
a
I
while
think
we have a heart, you know,
yes.
once a while.
I mean,
Occasionally.
starting with not Bright. What was her first book
Shine.
called? Shine, yes.
Yes.
Jessica Jung Shine. We have had a habit of very much talking about books about K-pop and being quite disparaging in our comments.
Mm-hmm.
And mainly about a lot of Asian American authors, which made us feel bad. Honestly,
It
and
honestly doesn't feel good that we
It
run an
does
entire
not feel good.
podcast, about Asian media, and every single book we've read, we just absolutely shit on. Yeah.
Or if we don't shit on, we come out with at least, like, mediocre opinions, because when we did that one about, we only really shit on K-Pop Revolution and K-Pop Confidential. Those were the ones we really shit on.
Yeah.
The other
those
two
ones
were
were pretty
mostly okay.
bad based on the
Those were really
description.
bad. But
Mhm.
we have decided to come in here with our apology, with a two-part apology. So this is part one, where we will be talking about books written by Asian American authors that
Mhm.
we really liked,
Yes.
that we enjoyed.
We finally have decided to read good books for a
Yes.
change.
Because I will say, in the past, we did actively. I mean, we never thought Jessica Jung's book, well written, was just an autobiography that we knew too much about.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the K-pop books, I don't think we went into with the highest of expectations.
No, we did not.
So this we look.
Maybe
for
we're
books
just harsher on teen books in general is the
Well,
problem.
I think it's more so the fact that we're harsh on the fact that they're about the K-pop industry
Yes.
that we know
Too
a
much about?
lot too much about, probably. Yeah,
Yeah.
so much.
So this time we decided to seek out books that we thought were either very well reviewed, that's the word, or highly recommended, or in things that we thought we would like.
Yeah.
So, I guess
Pretty
we
much,
can all
yeah.
just say really quick what we read, because I read Babel by R.F. Kuang.
I read Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim.
And I read I Guess I Live Here Now by Claire Ahn, which is her debut.
Yes.
Album debut.
So yes, we'll be going through, I think we're all going to go through and do like a non-spoiler review of each of our books, and then we will go into spoilers, because while each of us read our own book, we didn't really talk that much about it in terms of the plot, per se,
did
to
not.
each other. And we will just be spoiling it to each other because, to be honest, we're also not the biggest readers generally.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
the
used to
odds
be
of
as a
us actually-
child.
I used
but
to
not
be way more as a
anymore.
child. As an adult,
Not
I've stopped.
anymore, unfortunately, because life gets to you and you get distracted by other
It's hard
things.
to read, man.
It
It's hard to
is.
find time.
It's like, especially reading these two books.
Yeah.
Well, spoiler, there's another episode. We're doing another book.
Yeah, we're doing.
But like,
this one will be on.
I forget how like being forced. Like, I wouldn't say you're being forced to read, but trying to read on a timeline like you have to
Yeah.
do for school. I always forget how like, oh damn, this is rough.
Right.
To put it
I was
into
like,
perspective,
oh, goodness.
to put this into perspective, well, we have two books. So we did this. This episode is on Asian American authors. We did one on just Asian authors, so they're all from all over Asia, and these are translated books. So though that will be episode, I think in like 2 weeks will be out. That's
Yeah,
the
it's
timeline?
something. I think the
Something
timeline
like
is
that.
something like
2
that.
3
yeah.
weeks, whatever. But for the most part, we decided to do this the end of last year.
Mm-hmm.
And
We did that K-pop book club episode and felt real bad that we just spent
did.
like over 3 hours shitting
did.
on like
Yeah.
books we thought were bad.
We felt really bad the
Except for
minute we
me,
stopped
I
recording.
didn't really shit on my book as much.
You
in
read
all
it,
Yeah, but we
you read an
did.
okay book.
You
but
read
it
an
was
okay
mine,
book,
but it was
okay.
also
But
switched
here's the
between
thing.
3 other really bad.
Yeah, and
books.
here's the
Yeah.
thing: we all shit on K-pop Revolution
Yeah,
and K-pop
K-pop
Confidential.
Yeah,
We
based
all
on
shit
how you guys
those.
described them, they sounded
They
pretty
sounded
damn
awful.
bad. Mine sounded
Let's
like the
stop
best of the
talking about
idol
the shitty
choice
books in our
books.
apology episode. We can't just keep shitting on Steven. What's his last name?
Who
Stephen
can't exactly?
Lee.
That's how
Stephen Lee, I
irrelevant.
think.
Steven Lee.
That's how
Let's stop shitting
irrelevant
on
he
Steven
is.
Lee. Irrelevant, but
Mhm.
we did only finish these books, I think, in the last 2 weeks
Yeah.
because
Really
we have
recently.
just been we had like I think 5 months to read them, and sometimes life is hard.
Yep.
I also didn't want to read them too early because then I felt like I was going to forget everything.
Yeah, that's another issue too. You forget about certain
right.
details when it explains stuff about books if you're reading too
So,
early.
Kayla, what is your non-spoiler review of Six Crimson Cranes?
So, just to give like a little plot summary first, I'm literally gonna read just the back cover of the book.
Yes.
It says, it'll take more than magic to break this curse. Shorianma, the only princess of Kiata, has a secret. Forbidden magic runs through her veins. On the morning of her betrothal ceremony, Shori loses control of it, forestalling the wedding she never wanted, but also catching the attention of Raikama, her stepmother. A sorceress in her own right, Raikama banishes the young princess, turning her brothers into cranes and warning Shori that she must speak of it to no one, for with every word that escapes her lips, one of her brothers will die. Penniless, voiceless, and alone, Shori searches for her brothers and uncovers a dark conspiracy to seize the throne. Only Shori can set the kingdom to its rights, but to do that she must place her trust in a paper bird, a mercurial dragon, and the very boy she's fought so hard not to marry. And she must embrace the magic she's been taught all her life to contain, no matter what it cost her. So it's a very typical young adult fantasy book. The thing that is very interesting to me is I really do not like the fantasy genre at all. It's a thing that I've made quite known everywhere else is I just cannot read fantasy books. I think they're way too pretentious for me. The one like big caveat I have in not liking the fantasy genre is when the fantasy is based in like Eastern Asian elements or something of that nature, or even like Southeast Asian elements, all of that. I like it so much more. I think it's way more enthralling than all of the typical Western-based fantasy
It's
books.
also way less. I think just because we live in the West, we see a bunch of fantasy that is Western-based. I'm tired.
Medieval European vibes.
I'm so fucking tired of it. Like,
tired.
The only one like Western
same.
based that I'm interested in dipping my toes into would have to be stuff put out by Brandon Sanderson, but otherwise I don't really care about Western.
I can't do Brandon Sanderson.
No, but that's the only one that I'm interested in checking out. But that's
it. Stopped giving because the other thing with fantasy, and this is a thing that we'll talk about with a bunch of our books. Fantasy is just you're getting a brick.
Yeah,
you're getting a brick of text, and I'm like, that's so much investment
like,
of time for something I might not like.
The thing that I know a lot of people like about the fantasy genre is the world building, but I can't stand it. It's so pretentious to me, and I couldn't care less about any of that because a lot of what I enjoy in media is so plot and character based specifically that I do not care about the world building aspect, and that's a big part of the fantasy genre to begin with. But
I mean, it makes sense because you are creating another world, though, is the thing.
Yeah. You
So what you're saying, Kayla?
But, like, the thing is, if you're not into world building to begin with,
that
the genre has lost you from page
it's lost
one.
me immediately. Yeah.
Like when you flip in and you see first thing is 3 maps.
Mm-hmm.
But it also depends on the type of fantasy you're reading. Like high fantasy usually is what the adult books kind of go to.
Can't do it.
Low fantasy is usually targeted towards like kids, teens,
if
maybe
anything,
an adult here or there. You know what I mean?
The only fantasy I can do urban fantasy.
I can do urban fantasy. I'd really like urban fantasy, but high fantasy is like an immediate no.
Urban fantasy gives me more like not low, it's like what's it? It's high and then like soft fantasy, or like there's like another term for it, or low fantasy.
I know what you're talking about.
It's more palpable. There's aspects
of
the world that we have that like is there, and it's more straightforward and easier to understand. So like that type of fantasy is way more. I think
I think
tasteful
I'm just sick
for people
of medieval
to get into.
fantasy because
medieval fantasy is like so overdone.
If it's Europe medieval fantasy, I get it. But for me, if I could do like I don't know. Like some other type of medieval time frame fantasy that's not Europe. But the thing with
medieval fantasy is like I'm into that East Asian fantasy. I think is very interesting. Yes. I also think that there's fantasy from other cultures that I would really enjoy to see.
Yeah,
they have to have stories like that exist.
There are, but they're so dwarfed by just the amount of just basic medieval fantasy in pseudo medieval London. I'm bored.
I'm so bored of it.
I'm bored.
People are obsessed with London when it comes to this sort of shit. They are obsessed. Paris. London and Paris. It's like, guys, London and Paris. Move on.
Paris.
They're cool. I prefer London more, frankly, in my opinion. But, they're cool, but move on. There's other places that are cool, too,
Yeah.
But anyways.
So this book, Sips Crimson Cream, seems to be very much specifically based on like Chinese lore and traditions and legends and all sorts of things relating to that. And I really enjoy it. Because it is young adult. It doesn't do a ton of world building, which I am perfectly fine with because I don't need that to enjoy the book. It does have a map in the front of the book, which is like nice, but it's like the book's not written in a way that like really is like essential for you to know where everything is in relation to each other. Like that's not that important to know to enjoy the book. The map is very pretty and well illustrated though. And I really enjoyed it. It has a little bit of a twist ending, which is not something I expected reading the book, so I thought that was really fun. I think it is just really well written in general. I think Shori as a character is very well written. She is like a teenager and can be a little bit annoying because she is a teenager, and she's also like having like massive trauma where if she speaks to anybody, her brothers are gonna die. But even with that, I think she's very believable and very endearing still as well. I think there's only really one thing I haven't complained about is that her 6 brothers feel like they are one character together.
So it's giving Ty Lee sisters.
Yeah.
Kind of.
No, it's just that like they're so much of a side character to the plot that you get like little tiny bits of how each of them are different, like, but they're like one sentence long and they're not impactful enough and they're not behaving differently enough or in any type of a way different than each other as a group that makes them feel like individual characters. It's like the author is writing it with like, yeah, these 6 are here, but they're essentially one character together.
There's 6 of them so she can have multiple siblings.
Yes, essentially.
And she's really just one united sibling.
And she's the youngest daughter of the family, and all 6 of them are her older brother, so they all kind of behave in the same like older brother way to her to begin with. So it makes sense. I honestly think that's okay, just because there are so many other characters in the book that are more essential to the plot that writing it in a way where all 6 of them are kind of just one entity is like fine and it works. There is it does have a sequel, so the book ends it kind of ties up the ends of the story, but also then sets up like a big it's left on a bit of a cliffhanger because there is a sequel that is coming and is already out. So it's a little bit not as satisfying of an ending because of that. And that's because the sequel is called The Dragon's Promise, and there is a character she meets who is a dragon. And he is a lot less essential to this entire plot of the book than I would have expected him to be, given he gets introduced in the story very early and is set up to be like, he seems like he's set up to be like a main character, like plot point of the story. But he only kind of shows up sporadically after his main introduction, and I think that's because this book is sort of meant to introduce you to him because he is a main character of the sequel. But that's just like a heads up. If you want this book to be about dragons, it's really not about the dragon element is not in this book very much at all.
But it sounds like it'll be in the next book, is what it sounds like.
It's definitely, there is like an underlying like lore of dragons and this dragon kingdom and everything that you get like little bits and pieces of, but it definitely, from the description of the sequel, seems like that is like what really delves into all of that stuff.
Gotcha.
But I really liked it. I honestly want to read the sequel, and I also want to read her other book. Which is her other book is called Spin the Dawn, which is kind of based off of Mulan, like mixed with like Project Runway type of vibes.
Oh god.
Which honestly sounds really cool, and so I would love to read that one too. I don't do a lot of reading generally, but I really like this style, like specifically of like fantasy novel. So I would definitely like to read her other books as well.
So yeah, so I guess it's my turn. So I pulled the description from Amazon because I can't find the one in Kindle when I opened it up. But I mean, it's both the same company, so whatever. But anyways, the book I read is I Guess I Live Here Now, which is by Claire Ahn. And so the description, according to Amazon, is this one. Seoul, Korea. In this glittering city where the latest trends are born, Melody finds herself swept away by luxury, romance, and family drama. But is this a place she could ever call home? And then, thanks to a tiny transgression after school one day, Melody is shocked to discover that her parents have decided to move her and her mom out of New York City to join her father in Seoul immediately, barely having had the chance to say goodbye to her best friend before she's on a plane. Melody is resentful and homesick, but she soon finds herself settling into the super luxe villa, meeting cool friends at school, and discovering the alluring aspects of living in Korea. Trend-setting fashion, delectable food, her dad's black card. Oh yeah, and a cute boy to explore the city with. Life in Seoul is amazing until cracks begin to form on its glittering surface. Claire Ahn's charming debut lets you hear every beat of K-pop bop, taste every savory bite of Korean barbecue, bathe in the glow of Seoul's neon lights, and feel every high and low of Melody's emotional journey across the world and within her heart. So yeah, that mostly actually sums up a good chunk of the plot right there, honestly. Probably better.
So they Richie rich.
They really
they Richie rich.
So here's the thing though.
Girl got a black card. They
here's
Richie
the
rich.
thing, but
Very
here's
rich.
the caveat.
They not Richie rich. It's one of those Gangnam Style shit where they're in debt.
No,
is that the?
Yes,
is that,
here's
did
the
I
thing.
guess the plot
Yes,
twist?
I don't know how much of the plot to add on to this, but basically, Melody and her mom have been living by themselves in New York City for a good while. When she was younger, her dad went back to Korea for work, and her dad got Richie rich. While the family, basically, her and her mother lived off of whatever salary her mom was making and whatever
That's
job.
super fucking rude.
That's fun. That's so
There's
rude.
a whole
Are they
storyline
married?
to this. They're still married. So then,
Okay,
basically,
that's
to
fucked.
tell you a little bit in the beginning,
rude.
Melody gets caught with her friend smoking weed because it's New York City. Gets in trouble,
New
and then when
York.
she comes back home, her mom's clearly mad, but also she drops the bomb that, hey, we're actually going to move back to Seoul to meet with your dad and move in and live
Immediately.
together like we should have been for a long time ago as a family. And Melody's just like, what the fuck? I'm 16. I want to prep for college. I'm trying to get into this specific art school for design and interior designing, because that's her whole big shtick, is that she's big into interior designing. And that's when they go back to Seoul. And then basically Melody, who's totally not used to being rich, is now thrusted back for where her dad lives now, and it's living in a super rich place now in Seoul, and things go on from there. This is an interesting. I mean, first of all, first things first, this is a debut novel. So like, I wouldn't rate a book like this as harshly for that, unless it was abhorrently bad. Unless it was like a really, really, really bad debut novel. Like, I don't know, from what I heard.
Unless it was K-pop Confidential.
Or like something like, I don't know, something like
Sorry.
Light Lark.
I'm so
I never read
sorry.
Light Lark, but
This is an apology.
like, unless
episode.
it's something like
I'm
really bad, like
sorry.
Light Lark or something like that, from what I've
Fair
heard.
enough.
I haven't read Light Lark. I just want to put out
None
there.
of us have read
I
Light
was
Lark,
aware
by the
about the
way.
TikTok craziness around that on the book talk of things, and I think I listened to like a 7-hour YouTube video of a dude dissecting the whole fucking
Jesus.
book. He does it beautifully,
I feel like
though.
you could read that audiobook in 7
No,
hours.
not the audiobook. I didn't read the audiobook.
I'm just saying, I feel like if you had the audiobook playing, you could finish the book in 7 hours.
I mean, it's crazy. But anyways, back to this story, because that's irrelevant. So this is actually I think it's a pretty solid debut novel. Like, I think the only really negative things are that you could clearly see it falls into certain tropes, which I guess for a contemporary young adult novel, that's bound to happen. Tropes galore, contemporary novels like this I think are meant to be, easy to get through, some quick, fun, enjoyable, and stuff like that. And I think Claire Ahn, she comes with an interesting background as well, because she was technically grew up in Seoul. And, but, when she was, when she got older, she actually attended university in New York City and now lives apparently in Long Island with her husband, newborn daughter, and their dog. And as she puts it, writes about transcultural and the traditions, values, and legacy shape who we are. Yeah, and you see a lot about, like, intercultural stuff in this book, which definitely is a unique experience, because not every kid, not every kid has, these days, unless you come from certain countries, has direct immigrant parents, and then all of a sudden, they just decide to go back to the country of their parents' birth, because I think Melody probably was born in the States, in the story. Yeah, she was born in the States, but yeah, that doesn't always happen, where there's like this, you live in one place, you're born, you live in one place, and then you go back to where your parents grew up, and you live a different life now, and all that jazz, and you grew up as kind of being a kid of another culture into that. So that's not really an experience that a lot of, I think, kids necessarily experience. So it's definitely a unique spin on the type of contemporary novel and dealing with, like, interfamily and cultural issues. So I commend Claire for trying to do that into a novel where a teenager could try to understand, even one that hasn't specifically experienced changing cultures like that and going back to the parents' culture or whatnot. There are some tropes, I think, in terms of romance stuff, because, it's a contemporary novel, why would they not be romance?
I mean, that's
why
like
would they not be romance? But it's like,
romance.
Yeah, that's like, isn't that one of the things you have to check off?
You gotta include some romance in there. Surprising, one character is gay in the story. A minor character of a friend group. So there's a little bit of that discussion. It's not a big plot line, but it's a little bit of a plot line in terms of, like, oh, how do his parents feel about that sort of thing? And, oh, even though he's rich, this could be an issue in Korea, that kind of thing. But, yeah, for the most part, it's funny because it's kind of similar in a way to the previous, you know what's bad? I forgot the title of that previous book I read for our Idol book thing, but it's a similar...
It wasn't called, like, XOXO?
Yes, it was XOXO, you're right. Yeah, it was XOXO. Not Gossip Girl. But, literally was XOXO. So it's kind of, like, light and airy in that vein, and I think I would give it a similar rating to that. But I think, I don't know if the other one was a debut novel. It could have been, but hey, maybe they talked, maybe they put something together. I don't really know. But, yeah, it's a good, decent contemporary story, a light read. If you had to choose, like, maybe not, I wouldn't say it's amazing, but, it's solid, which for a debut novel, I think is what you should aim for, to have a somewhat solid, decent book. Maybe not the most amazing thing ever, but a solid book. So I think Claire passed the test in that regard and gave an interesting spin on the, teenage contemporary novel in terms of cross-cultural experiences like that. So yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Would you say it's just like an easy, like, fun book to read type of a thing where it's like
I would say so, yeah.
Like, read it on a beach type of a vibe?
Yeah, you could honestly probably read this book on a beach. It'd chill. It's not too much brain power, It's certain things like, oh, all of a sudden she finds out her dad's rich and lives in a mega mansion and has a driver, yeah, obviously not most people aren't going to relate to that, but
sometimes you don't want to think too much about, like, a book. You just want to read it for fun, so that's nice.
It's not full of, like, crazy and rich agents, but Claire must have been inspired to throw a little bit of rich people pizzazz on that.
It makes sense.
On that crap, because, hey, Chables makes some, writing stories about Chables makes some interesting drama when you got lots of money thrown in there,
Yeah,
but yeah, solid, easy, chill book to read. If you're ever bored and you just want something light and fluffy well, not completely light and fluffy because there's a little bit of family drama, but, like, it's not, like, intense family drama. It's one of those where it's like the parents never talked about certain things for what reason, why, who knows, and also the other relatives of the parents never
the other
talked about it. There's a whole other subplot with
miscommunication trope.
I'll get into it later in the spoiler thing, but there's a whole other subplot with her mom's sister or her aunt that comes into play and apparently helps influence decision making at the end of the day for the main character, for Melody, and blah 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 blah. So there's slight influence, but, like, there's family drama tied to that too as well. But anyways, yeah, I'd say it's a solid. Probably give it like a 3. What did I give the other one? I think the other one I gave like a 3.5 out of 5. This one I'd probably say for most 3.5 out of 5 as well. Good book, solid book, easy read. Yeah.
So speaking of thinking too hard about a book,
Uh-huh.
I read Babel. I read Babel by R.F. Kuang. I want to point out that the book is actually Babel, I don't know. It's also called Babel, or the Necessity of Violence and Arcane History of the Oxford Translators' Revolution. That's the title, people. I want to point out that for as snarky as I'm going to be, one, this book has taught me many things. One, it's taught me I have lost a lot of my attention span. This book is 550 pages long.
So long.
At some point, I did have to. It's the longest
Girl,
book.
there's longer. Try reading Tolstoy.
I'm
like,
not reading Tolstoy. And also,
try
Tolstoy,
reading A War and Peace.
I'm not reading. Did I say I wanted to read a War
No,
and
but
Peace?
always remember, y'all, there is longer.
I've
somehow.
read it, so.
Oh, yeah,
I've
it's pretty big.
I've read it. It
It's
is
pretty
double the
big.
length.
Yeah,
It's double the length of this book. I've read it. So it's not that I can't read long books. It's this book is real dense. So I will read the description from the inside cover. Also,
is it denser than tungsten? That's a metal. That's a metal. Is it denser than the metal tungsten?
Boo science jokes.
You know what?
Boo.
It's great. Okay, my cousin got
Boo.
that
That feels
recently
like
for his
such a
birthday.
random metal to use as an example.
Tungsten is heavy. If you compare it to titanium, tungsten is like heavy. That bitch is heavy. Anyways, go ahead. Dense book, Sammy.
So the description of this book is 1828. Robin Swift orphaned by the cholera in Canton, brought to London by the mysterious Dr. Lovell. There, Robin trains for years in Latin, Ancient Greek, and Chinese, all in preparation for the day he'll enroll in Oxford University's prestigious Royal Institute of Translation, also known as Babel. The tower and its students are the world center of translation and, more importantly, magic. Silverworking, the art of manifesting the meaning of lost in translation using enhanced silver bars, has made the British unparalleled in power as the arcane craft serves the Empire's quest for colonization. For Robin, Oxford is a utopia dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge, but knowledge obeys power, and as a Chinese boy raised in Britain, he realizes serving Babel means betraying his motherland. As his studies progress, he finds himself caught between Babel and the Shadowy Hermes Society, an organization dedicated to stopping imperial expansion. When British pursues an unjust war with China over silver, opium, Robin must decide. Yes, so this book is very long.
Just
very
from
detailed.
that summary alone,
There's
feels like
magic.
there's a lot going on.
So this is 1800s British Empire period. Alternate
Yes,
history
this
kind of
is
vibe.
This is colonialism. This is the diaspora. This is the idea of translation. This book goes a lot into translation.
Is he from Hong Kong? Or
No, he's
near
from
southern China?
Canton.
Canton. Where is Canton located?
Canton
It's in
is
southern
like
China.
another sea. Yes, it is in China. It's like another sea. It's like another ship. What? Coastal. That's the Jesus.
coastal city.
My brain is. I came home at 2 a.m. yesterday from work. I'm
fine.
felt tired.
You're good. I'm trying to
I'm
think.
exhausted. Coastal.
Is that in
Jesus.
Guangzhou?
Look, to put into perspective of the author, which I think the background of the author does help a lot. R.F. Kuang is 26 years old currently. She has already written 3 books in the Poppy War series before this, all of which center
that's the
around-
same author. Okay,
Yes,
I know.
all
I know
of which
about that
center
series.
around the the Chinese opium wars in like a also. Like, I wouldn't call this urban fantasy because it's still historical fantasy.
Is it giving steampunk historical?
No,
fantasy?
because it's not at all steam. Nothing is powered by steam. It's all powered by magic silver. It's like magical fantasy. It's like, I would say it's historical fantasy. Also, dark academia. I finally understand
Very
what
dark
that means.
academia.
Yeah,
I
it's
finally know
giving
what that means. I still don't know what the aesthetic means, but sure, we're gonna go with it.
All right. So, side note, this actually is currently now known in the province of Guangdong, which is southern China. So that's what Canton
Which
is.
is where the author was
which
born.
is near, which is actually is right next to Hong Kong, the island Hong Kong. So it's
yes,
the same.
but it is
yeah.
yes. But so to put into but she's not from
Yeah,
Hong Kong.
yeah, she's not.
But to put into perspective, this girl grew up she went to Georgetown and majored in history. Then she wrote the Poppy War, started writing the Poppy War at 19. Then went to the University of Cambridge and gained her master's of philosophy in Chinese studies. Then went back to went to Oxford and received her MSc in Contemporary Chinese Studies and now is currently in Yale getting her PhD in East Asian languages and literature.
Just one
To
of
put
the
into
most
perspective,
intellectual
this
people
author.
to ever exist.
To write a
This woman
fictional
has
novel.
done a lot.
And she's our age too.
This
She's
woman-
only like about a
Yeah,
month
she's
younger
our
than me.
makes me feel real bad about myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Clearly
Also,
someone
I
who
think
clearly
they-
likes studying, very highly
Clearly
motivated.
Someone, also,
highly
clearly
motivated.
someone who is very well educated
Yes.
and all
So
the time.
well
highly
educated.
motivated. Oh my god.
Very well educated. I have nothing. This book is very good. I did at some point have to have this book. Essentially, I had to go to the audiobook of this book, which there's nothing wrong with that. Audiobooks are still reading, in my opinion. And I was reading along with it physically because I did buy this book. But at some point, I had to just have it read because it is so dense. There are so many footnotes. And the footnotes not only encompass, like, real, because it will reference like real people and real events and real people's actual opinions, and then also randomly do a lot of world building in the footnotes.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of world building. But this book is very good. It is not a light read, not a read that you just want to pick up. It's like the opposite of Maria's book, where it's like you don't want to bring this to a beach.
Uh-huh.
You're gonna be thinking
Or
too hard.
maybe you do want to bring that to a beach because you're too bored
Maybe you
sitting
wanna bring
around
it
at
to
the
the beach,
beach.
but
It depends on the individual.
You kind of do need to, like, this book you gotta consume in chunks. Because it is criticizing British imperialism, it criticizes capitalism, it criticizes racism, it is a very diverse cast of characters, but it also comes at it from all angles, from, like, people that are, like, known villains to people that think they're doing the right thing, to criticisms of, like, white woman feminism and also white woman racism.
So she's just
like,
hitting
it's a
up
lot.
everyone.
It is-
She's just like, fuck
she's
you,
hitting
fuck you, fuck
everything.
you, fuck you,
She
fuck
is
you.
hitting the Opium War. She is hitting slavery. She is hitting, because there is like a cast of 4 characters here. So you have Robin, who is Chinese. You have Rami, who is Muslim and from Calcutta. You have Letty, who is the daughter of a, like, prominent British, I think he's military something, but she is a woman, and she's a white woman. And then you have Victoire, who is Haitian and black, and also, I believe, a former slave, or, yeah, a former slave.
Yeah, about to say, like India
it's
too.
a
You
lot
got
of
Calcutta,
big-
India
A lot
too
of-
as well.
a
It's
lot of
hitting
issues.
a lot of things. Oh, we hit all of those
Mhm.
issues. And I have seen a lot of the criticism of this book specifically on, like, white TikTok. All those people are kind of dumb. Yeah, this book does just point out all of terrible things that happen in imperialist Britain. And if that makes you feel bad, maybe you are, I don't know who you're sympathizing with
Maybe
in
do
this
some
book.
like introspection.
Do some
or something.
self-reflection.
Is there any
Well, my
criticism that you've
criti-
seen, Sammy, that's fair of the book? Is my question.
I mean, this book is really, really dense, and this book is very, very, like, it's not a light read. A lot of people can call it, again, the most criticism I've ever seen is that some people can find the book a little bit pretentious. I wouldn't call it pretentious, because everything that she is saying does validate in on itself from history. And the writing, I wouldn't even say is pretentious, because the writing's so extremely well researched. So I don't fully, a lot of the criticisms I was finding seemed racist. And that is just
Was
a
it kind
very
of like they're
blatant thing I was
criticizing
coming
everything else,
across.
but she's not criticizing Chinese stuff during that time? Or is that where it's coming from? Or no?
Because also a lot of those people don't actually know what the Chinese stuff would have
That's
been at
fair,
that
yeah.
time.
I wouldn't be surprised.
From the stuff that I saw of the book,
It
it's
just came
people
across
can't
as-
for some reason people
can't
can't relate to a
relate to not a
Chinese character.
Protagonist.
Yeah,
Considering that the main characters of this story and the core main characters of the story are all people of color,
Yeah.
a lot of people had a very, like, that they could not, because at its core, anyone can relate to these people, because you're dealing with a fish out of water story. You are dealing with a lot of people in a very different
Yeah,
situation. While their
I think when it
situation
comes to
is
some very
extremely-
specific details, you probably have a hard time relating. But I
You
bet you there's a
can,
lot
but
you
also,
can relate
most
to.
people are not 1930s kids who lost their mother to a cholera epidemic in 1810s China
Yeah.
that were then swept away to learn ancient Greek. I would say that is almost no one's experience
Yeah.
if we're getting into
Uh-huh.
specifics.
Yeah, exactly. That's for the most part, at least.
yeah,
Maybe
I don't
there's
know. I
one
feel
or
like a lot
two
of the
people in reality where it's
There are
happened.
criticisms in this book that I think are valid. I think this book meanders a little bit. I think this book is a little bit meandering for me. I think for me, where I really liked it is I liked the beginning where the kid is because we follow essentially Robin's whole journey and like from when his mother died when he's a young boy to through his childhood learning all of this stuff to him going to Oxford to the whole situation that happens there. We go through the whole thing with him, and I think that the middle bit meanders a little bit for my taste, but at the end I've also heard a lot of criticism that people thought that the ending was a little bit, that they didn't like the ending. The ending was my favorite part.
Oh, really?
I think the ending, once the action kicks in, I'm more into it because I think it's great.
Do you think there might be too much build up before then?
In my opinion, well, the book is 550 pages.
Yeah, true point.
I don't think most books need to be that long, including like a War and Peace or It by Stephen King, if we're going to talk about the other two very long books we mentioned.
True.
I don't think a lot of those books need to be as long as they do. But that's my personal opinion on books. I think if we can condense anything, we should condense it. But overall, I thought it was really well done. I think this is a very good book. Will I ever read it again? I don't know, because would I read a sequel? Yes, I would. Would I read this again?
Do you know if there's going to be a sequel or nah?
No, this has been said to be a standalone.
Okay, so because I know her first thing she did was a trilogy.
Trust me when I tell you, at the ending of this book, there is kind of an opening for there is not that much of an opening for a sequel here.
Like, if anything, could it be potentially a duology? A la, like, Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom kind of stuff.
We'll get into spoilers.
Okay.
We're getting into spoilers if I go into that.
Fair enough.
I think it's a very good standalone. I think we should keep it.
Honestly, we need to hype up standalones more. Straight up.
I think standalones are an underrated thing because not everything 100%. Needs 2 books.
Yeah.
We don't need, especially, I especially like, because this is...
Or if anything, we don't always need to have every book series be a trilogy. Duologies, guys.
God,
do some duologies here.
Duology is nice.
Duologies.
I think we need to hype up a standalone because, dear God, especially fantasy standalones, because this is like a historical fantasy. Mm-hmm. I think fantasy standalones are a very underrated genre because I feel like every fantasy book goes on for at least 3 books. Or maybe 5, depending on the fan. Like, I think we've gone too far sometimes. But yes, I do really like this book. All right, so shall we get into the spoiler talk?
Yes, we shall.
I feel like I kind of have to get like just a real fast plot summary before I get to the spoilery parts for it to make sense. So, essentially, our main character, Shori, the book opens, she is about to meet this prince who she's been betrothed to. She decides she doesn't want to do that, jumps into a lake. I forgot, she just jumping into a lake and then gets saved by a dragon who's in the lake, who puts like a little piece of like his quote-unquote dragon pearl into her heart. And that's not super relevant for right now, but I think that's a big thing for the sequel. Until after that, she discovers she can do like tiny bits of magic, the main one being that there's a paper crane that she makes that she brings to life and she can talk to it, and the crane can like move around and essentially be like a bird as long as it is still functional like as a paper crane, with the added addition that she can also talk to the bird in her head. Once she does that, she starts getting like magic lessons from the dragon in the pond lake thing, and that kind of raises the suspicions of her stepmother, who her father like very mysteriously like brought back from a place and married all of a sudden, and is like just kind of very distant and like very strict. And she, as there's more like magic as she learns, she's been getting like more and more scrutinized by the stepmother. So she follows her stepmother into a garden one day, sees her stepmother go into like a portal, and is about to cast some type of like weird magic thing, but she gets caught. And that's when the stepmother turns her into, she doesn't turn her into anything, she turns all 6 of her brothers into cranes, and then puts this like giant wooden bowl on top of her head that like just she cannot take off, and essentially just has to wear around for the rest of the journey, and just essentially banishes her to somewhere very far away from the kingdom she is currently in, and says that if she talks to anyone or lets them know who she is, for every word she speaks, she's gonna kill one of her brothers, who have now all been turned into cranes. She ends up in like a really far away place, gets hired as like a servant at a inn, eventually runs away from there, and by chance does end up meeting her brothers as cranes. And apparently her brothers are able to like transform from cranes and back into people by like nighttime. I think in nighttime they turn back into people, but in the daytime they're cranes.
So they're like animal shapeshifter people now.
A shapeshifter type of situation.
But like reverse vampire situation almost.
Yeah, a reverse vampire, if you will, but cranes.
Crazy.
And then she gets in contact with her dragon friend. Dragon friend tells her there's this like some special type of like weed plant that grows on an island that she needs to pick so she can weave this net to throw over her stepmother, because that's the only way they can get. She's got like an evil dark dragon pearl inside of her, and so they need to put her in the net to like and speak her real name in order for the spell to be broken. But then they also realize that in order for Shori to do that, she has to speak, which means one of her brothers would end up dying at that point. So they go to that island, she gets the stuff, then they get separated because she gets like caught by a neighboring kingdom. Turns out this neighboring kingdom that catches her is the kingdom of the prince who she was supposed to be marrying. And so that's a little awkward now.
Awkward. Oh no.
And then like a lot of stuff happens here. A lot of this is like building up to the fact that prince she was supposed to be marrying actually very nice person. She just hated him because she didn't want to be forced to marry someone, but as she meets him like separately as a person, they like really get along. She really likes him, and that marriage probably would have worked out very well.
Oh, good for them.
He also has a older cousin who's also at this palace with her. Older cousin hates her, seemingly out to get her, and seemingly wants to kill her. We later find, since this is where big plot twist stuff starts happening, the older cousin ends up being not actually this older cousin and is like some type of like weird shapeshifter who took her place and belongs to this like weird sect of people who want to release these like demons out of this mountain. And the only way to release the demons out of the mountains is through magic. And they need Shori to do that because she is one of the only people left in the world who can do magic and has like access to even do that. She does that, and then we find out that her stepmother, who put this curse on her and her brother, was actually not doing it to hurt them. She did it as a way to hide them away from this secret sect of people who was after her for her magic. So her banishing them and turning her brothers into cranes was to essentially limit their ability to find her, because she can't use and access her magic. So they've completely lost track of where she's at, and they can't find her brothers either to like get to her because they're all birds now. And so we realized,
great plan.
Yep.
Totally great. No holes in that plan.
No holes in that plan at all. Just turn them into birds.
Turn them into birds and communicate with no one.
And it's like, I was like, there is
right there.
a better way it could have gone about that. But she did say that it's not what she...
cranes.
Cranes. They explain it in the way that this is not at all what she intended to do, but when she was trying to cast a spell to hide them away, the sort of dragon power took over, and that's what it decided she wanted, because she just knew that her desire was like, I need to hide them. And so then the corrupted dragon pearl was like, cool, we're gonna turn them into
It's like a genie curse where they're like, I need to hide them.
Oh, birds, yes.
Cranes.
Yes. Immediately.
Always, it's always great when you have crane-based, any plan is better when it's crane-based, obviously.
Clearly. But then after that, there is this other guy in a neighboring kingdom, and he is evil and possessed by like one of these demon things who is trying to like open the mountain full of demons. I forget the specifics of it. They end up defeating him, and her stepmother ends up having to deplete like a lot of her energy and her magic, and essentially tells Shori that she needs to take the dragon pearl out of her because it's essentially killing her slowly, and she doesn't want to keep living like that. So there's a very like
emotional.
It's the thing that is, I think my other criticism of this part is that because it's such a fast turnaround on the stepmother being evil to suddenly now she realizes how much of an actual mother figure she is and how helpful she's been her entire life. It's like it doesn't hit as hard, I think, as it should have, because that like turnaround is so fast. It doesn't really develop into anything, but that happens, and then once they get the corrupted dragon pearl out of the stepmother, it then sets up all of the stuff for the sequel, where essentially she has to go with her dragon friend to the dragon realm and do stuff in the dragon realm.
Fun.
But yes, that's
Dragon
essentially the whole
realms.
book.
I mean, that sounds like a really fun time.
It was a fun
roller
book.
coaster.
It was actually a roller coaster. There's so many things going on. I feel like it was also pretty fast paced because there is a lot of like, she's in different cities and now she's here with a completely new set of characters and I'm trying to navigate that and everything. But I do think it doesn't feel rushed. It feels very like every part of the story is like well developed and everything. So I really liked it. I think it was very good overall.
Is there a chance for her and that nice prince? Is there a chance for a love story right there?
Yeah, so the thing is that it's there. I think there is a chance there because
But she'll probably
really-
make it
I
organic.
really
if
like that
anything, she'll make it
relationship.
organic, which, you know, hey, love
Happy for them.
organically instead of arranged
Love.
marriage.
That was like a really well-written romance, the stuff that gets sets up between her and the other prince. Like, I really enjoyed that. The only other thing is that there's also a weird romance happening
Oh
with the
crap, she's in a
dragon.
love
Between
triangle.
Between
No.
between her and the dragon. And I'm like, I don't know what's
Goddamn
going on
love
with the dragon
triangles.
situation.
We don't-
But
We are very famously anti-interspecies.
yeah,
romance.
so I would much rather prefer
Very-
her to just... And also,
Date
like,
that nice boy.
the implications of her in love with the dragon are also a little bit weird. So
And
I'd
maybe
like to
they'll
just
make it
not
like
do
the
that.
dragon
That gave
dies
her
for
her
her because,
magic.
you know, the dragon loves her. Cool. You know, that might make sense. Do that.
Love,
Yeah.
Or counterpoint. The dragon turns out to be just a weird perv because
A weird guy.
that's
Oh,
just what
jeez.
I'm getting out of that.
Yeah.
Interspecies romance doesn't work.
I feel like it definitely is pointed more the direction she's gonna end up with the other prince, which I think is very cute because a lot of his
Aw.
storyline is she has always her entire life been known she's been betrothed to him and just desperately didn't want to have to marry him just because he was the person
Just
she
because
was
she was
told to be
supposed to?
married. He very much wanted to get to know her and actually like really desperately wanted to love her, end up loving her,
Aw.
so he just wrote her like so many letters, like hundreds of
Aw.
letters that she
So
never
hopeless
read.
romantic.
She never even
That's
read,
sweet
and like
boy.
Did she
would
read
write,
them?
and he would write like fantasy stories and everything, and then eventually he gave up because she just wasn't responding to him. And then after the betrothal, where she just completely left
just
and jumped in a
bounces?
lake instead, is like
Just-
where he kind of gave up.
How shitty do you gotta feel where you're like, I wrote hundreds of letters.
Yeah,
I was such a
Could not
nice
read
guy, and
any
she
of them.
jumped in. No, and she jumped
she
in
jumped in a
a lake
lake
to avoid talking to me.
The thing is about
How
she
shitty
jumps
do
in the
you
lake
gotta
because she
feel?
does make the paper crane like sporadically, and it is sort of she's following that and is trying to hide the fact that she can do magic, and that's how she ends up in the lake. But it's still like a wild
But it
situation.
looks like, hey,
Yeah.
she hates you.
She hates
she
you.
Jumped
She'd
into a
rather
lake.
would go jump in this lake and almost dies jumping in that lake.
God.
If I'm being honest, that is the childhood thing of
Did
like.
they have a
"Hey,
discussion
girl,
about
go
this, by the
jump
way? This, like, misconception?
They do have a
Yeah.
Okay.
once she is like allowed
Good,
to
they
speak again.
communicate!
They do.
Teenagers? Oh
They
my
do
God.
communicate.
Also,
about
in
it.
my mind, that is just like that 90s reaction to a creep hitting on you. It's like, oh, what up, girl? Go jump in a lake.
Yeah. The only reason she survives after jumping in that lake is because
Dragon?
the dragon
And
finds
then
her.
she's like,
Yeah.
oh wait, this dude's actually kind of wholesome. Shit.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, once she gets to know him and everything, it's like very cute. And she was like, I was really mean to this kid for no
Like,
reason at
I
all.
am. I like that it deals with some self-reflection.
But granted, at the same time, she could have been
I'm the
marrying
problem
potentially an
here,
asshole.
damn.
So, like,
Right.
you know, because at the end of the day, she has no choice in the matter, which is what I think she hated more.
And that's the thing that she was
but
really
also, like,
anti
neither does
against,
he.
yeah.
I feel like he's trying to make the best of a
He
situation.
is,
and
right.
He's
It's
trying
just
to make,
two
and she's making the
completely
worst of the
opposite
situation.
outlooks to have on that type of
Yeah.
situation, yeah.
Alrighty, so what is the twist of, I Guess I Live Here Now? Are they poor?
I mean, I don't. No, they're not poor. They're rich.
Damn it.
There isn't real. I wouldn't say there is a twist. I think the twist is really at the. I guess you could say it's the beginning. It's the twist that does. I feel like the twist is it doesn't become an idol story, which is nice. She doesn't fall in love with the idol. There you go.
Oh, there's an idol?
That's kind of nice.
There's no idol. There's no.
Good for
No. There's
her.
wait. There's no idol. Sorry. The twist is not.
Oh.
There's no idol. Although the interesting, I think if there is a twist, I think it has to do with the subplot with her mom and her aunt, where like it turns out. So there's this whole thing where her mom and aunt, they both moved to the States with their parents, yada yada yada, And then,
et cetera,
and then there was a whole thing where the Aunt Rebecca, the aunt, moves back to Seoul and doesn't talk to them for decades, right?
Jeez.
Yeah, and so, and of course,
What did the mom
Melody is all
do?
like, what the fuck's going on here? So then she keeps trying to meet her aunt in secret, and your aunt's just like, you shouldn't be sneaking around your mom's back for this reason. Come to find out, there's a couple things that go on with the aunt. A, she sings at basically bars.
Okay.
Oh yeah, so like karaoke bars and stuff like that. So like, yeah,
seems like a reasonable
and
activity.
And then it turns out though a lot of it stems from the fact that her and her mom were trying to be singers when they were younger, and then basically, the mom got pregnant. Melody's mom got pregnant with her. So then, and she was still in college, so she's just like, I'm gonna give up on that dream now because I'm having a kid. Then Aunt Rebecca is also in college, but she joins because, essentially to follow the sister, she's all like pissed. And there's all like, you know what, fuck it. I still want to have this dream, be a singer and do all this shit. So she goes off to Korea to be a singer, and she's mad about, I guess, her sister kind of changing the dream. And
she's mad her sister had a child.
Had a baby?
Not the kid, not necessarily that she was having a kid and had a child. I think it was just more so I think it was more so the obsession of giving up on the dream, because it reflects Melody's whole dream about her wanting to be an interior designer, basically, in the story. So it connects kind of like that.
Design.
Yes, interior designing. There is a whole segment where she interior designs a friend's like room over that she makes when she goes to.
The only type of hobbies you can have if you're richy rich.
Well, here's the thing: she didn't know she was wealthy. Is the thing.
Fair enough.
She didn't know, and she was into interior designing before in New York City. So, like, it wasn't just because she's a richy rich thing.
No, I'm just saying the only time you can interior design your friend's room and it actually happened is if you're richy rich. Like, that's not a thing.
Yeah, fair enough.
I feel like I appreciate the fact that it's not a full K-pop. It's like set in South Korea, but it's not related to K-pop.
I'm like sitting here waiting for the K-pop of it to pop up, and it doesn't happen, which is nice.
I love that, actually.
I think that's a great idea.
But anything, though, I'll continue on with the main storyline and talk about the storyline so that I can point out other things. Basically, I talked about in the beginning, Mel gets in trouble smoking weed with her homegirl. So I think her name's Sophie. Yeah, her name's Sophie. And then, of course, oh no, that's a problem. And then, then mom's all like, hey, bitch, guess what? Your dad's wealthy. And we're gonna move back to Korea to live with him together. And Mel's just like, oh, I am 16. What the fuck? Is having the reasonable, but also the very exaggerated teenage emotions of, oh my God, my friend is here. My life is in New York City. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, blah, blah. New York City is amazing. Blah, blah, blah. Very homesick for New York City. This goes on throughout the entire book. Basically, her mom moved back, finds out dad lives in a super wealthy area, very wealthy apartment complex. And she finds out she's getting enrolled into private school called SIA. I forget what the acronym stands for, but basically, going there and making some friends. Weird thing, though, that her dad does. There's a couple weird things that are very archaic that her dad and some of these other rich people's dads do. Number one, her dad decides to force her to go on some dates. Real talk.
That's weird.
Yes, weird rich people shit. And which I swear, if this happens in Korea, rich people, Korean kids, I feel so sorry for you. That must be such a pain in the ass. But yeah, basically, one of them, she goes on a first date with a dude who's playing very nice and trying to do coupley things, but turns out later on finds out is someone who she becomes new friends with, a girl, has a crush on that dude. And that dude was essentially just doing it for her because, the guys wanted to be on a date. But, so he kind of is rigid, but he eventually, becomes less of a douche later on, yada, yada, yada. Next date, I'm talking about this isn't necessarily concurrent to the plot, but I'm just going to go through these dates and talk about them. Another one is a date from a complete asshole, and she leaves early from it because he's just a slime bag rich boy. Okay, cool. The final date is the gay BFF. Because the big stick of that is, shocker, surprising, not surprising, given, it's Korea. He's gay. He has a secret, I think, Chinese boyfriend. But of course, mom and dad don't know about that. At least at that time in the story, they don't. So yeah, but she has a pleasant experience with, and she reports back to her dad that, oh, it's a nice experience, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I still don't get why the dude forced them, or force her to go on dates for connections and stuff like that, but I don't know. But I think ultimately it kind of ties in a little bit with his eventual choice of a job and how he essentially gave into that kind of thing to try to be wealthy and get wealth from his parents and stuff like that. But yeah. Basically, yeah, there was a lot of stuff I cut out from. I realized I cut out long-wise. But yeah, she gets enrolled to the private school, makes a bunch of friends. Notably, her dad, in part of the school, forces her to take honors Korean. And of course, while Melody also, he also calls her by her Korean name, Solmi, while she's all like, knows how to speak some Korean, she ain't no expert. Because again, she grew up in the States, they gotta know some English. Like, at best, she's gonna know, like, what they call, I wouldn't say, not specifically Korean, but what I've been told by friends who do speak multiple languages in the home, it's kind of like, okay, I only know, like, home, insert language, like the type of how you speak the language at home kind of deal, not necessarily throughout general conversation. So that's like kind of her thing. And she's all like, why you forced me to take honors Korean? And she's basically doing terribly in that class. However, she gets close to this dude named Wonjae.
As you would if you're not.
But her dad's all like, you're from Korea, your parents are Korean, you must take honors Korean, blah, 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 all that jazz, which, okay, dad, cool. Yeah, gets really close to this boy in the friend group called Wonjae. We'll put a pin on Wonjae. Anyways, Wonjae and her newfound homies, whose names I forget, take her out to the club because she's all sad about her grades being shit, which, fair. But they're like, you know what, fuck it, let's have fun at the club because we're also wealthy-ish and we go to this private school and, let's lose some steam, right? And I guess she makes out with Wonjae at the club for a little bit, because, teenager things, attraction, shocker, and then goes out to hang with the friends. She gets home, and it turns out, and it looks like her parents are fighting, they're fighting over about her activities, trying to be safe, her trying to make friends, and, like, I guess about what potential career she could have for her life and all that jazz they're fighting. Yeah. Oh, yeah, she also... Notoriously, Melody's very much headstrong and all like, I don't want to use the driver. I don't want to use the private driver. I want to walk and use the bus. I don't care. And of course, maybe it's also because of New York City having the freedom to have a routine, although I know. Basically, in the midst of all this and her parents bickering, she finds out she's selected for a competition in Soho for this internship at some interior design school, I think. And basically tells her mom about it. And her dad's like, well, okay, here's the catch, homegirl. You're at a B- average, which, of course, for your atypical Asian parent, that basically means she's failing. So basically, he's all like, get all A's on your midterms and then you can go. Okay, cool. And, of course, eventually, she also talks to her mom about some of these feelings and stuff like that. And, and her mom's like, girl, decorating is, like, a hobby, basically. Why are you so interested? And Mel, goes on a whole rant to be like, okay, I like this, but also you're hiding so much shit from me about our family life and blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, that happens. Also, at some point, she finds her dad's journals when he was younger and basically a lot of them chronicle his experiences they're all written in Korean, of course. So during the honors class, she's also trying to understand what the fuck he's writing in his journals in Korean. So secretly deciphering his journals, I guess.
That's kind of funny as like a goal to have for my honors Korean classes. I want to read my dad's secret journal.
Nothing groundbreaking is in the journals. It's more so I think she eventually understands his feelings about certain things of like, oh, I'm happy living with, insert mom's name and, my daughter, and also about the type of work he's doing when he had to go to the States, the type of jobs he tried to do, making it on his own, and eventually, money, he wanted to do much better in his life, and then he decided to succumb to the pressure of his parents' business as being lawyers, and basically go back to Korea to become a lawyer and get, like, rich, so then he could support the family, but, the wife was all just like, I want to stick out here, I have a job here, I'm having fun. And for a while he sent money, but then it came to a point where she was like, don't send money, just save it. I'll take care of the kiddo out here, kind of deal. And eventually that's revealed over the course of the story. Basically,
All right, bear with me on this comparison. Bear with me for 1 second. It's a stretch, but bear with me. Why is this giving weird Korean princess diaries, only instead of a princess, she's just rich and the dad's not dead?
You know?
It is kind of giving that.
A little bit, actually. Now that you put it out there.
Think about it. It's giving a little princess diaries.
A little bit. And of course, I will say, as a side note too, throughout the book, as like with XOXO, I wouldn't say there's too much talk about the K-pop stuff. Honestly, Claire, like the author doesn't really reference any particular K-pop groups or anything like that. So it's interesting that the description of the book said that. But like, there's definitely a lot of talk about like the type of food you find in Korea, the type of locations, all that jazz, you know, activities, all that jazz.
I think the descriptions, which are written by marketing, have to mention K-pop because the time.
But I'll be honest, there isn't really too much talk about the K-pop of it
Not
all.
in the book. I'm saying the marketing.
No, yes, of course they're going to mention the K-pop of it all.
Just for having, you know.
But she definitely goes into the description of the places, though. So, like, you know, like if you ever want to travel to Korea, you could probably find these locations easily somewhat because of this book, honestly.
I really like the idea of the book just essentially being about Korean culture and just any sorts of other cultures that are not related specifically to like the K-drama, K-pop, you know, like culture that is like more globally known, I guess. I don't know, I really appreciate that because I feel like so many of the books that are set in South Korea have to pull from one of those two aspects normally as like a selling point because that's like what people want to read. But I do very much appreciate the fact that it seems to be just like a more family dynamic, like sort of adjusting to culture's like cultural book than it is anyway.
Yeah,
so
of course with the caveat that it's, you know, rich people, but you know.
Right.
With the caveat that it's rich people, not your average, like
rich people.
Yeah. Okay, back from the party and making out with Wonjae. Her and Wonjae the next day are awkward in class, shocker, because they never had the talk about what are they, of course. But now they're doing a project together, so I guess we're going to delay that talk for a while. She asked him to tutor her because she wants to go to this competition in Soho and blah, 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 make her dreams come true, of course. And he is all like, I'll show you my secret studying spot. And it's cute and wholesome interactions between them. Cool. Mel and Mom publicly decide to go ahead and meet the aunt at her workplace now, which is, I guess, the stripper bar. But she's not a stripper. She sings, I guess. And the aunt is apparently now looking for an assistant, and the mom's not happy, being like, really, Rebecca, really? And they have a little tiff and, you know, moving on. Her dad, I guess she's chilling at home doing some drawings of buildings and stuff, and, you know, and dad surprised her and sees like, oh, she's drawing these Hanok buildings. Okay, because she saw them walking by, you know, blah, blah, blah. The old traditional Korean-style houses that they got. I think it's Hanok. Hanok, yeah. Not hanbok. Don't confuse it with hanbok. Hanbok's the traditional outfit dress, not the house. And he actually he suggests her a place to go and visit and have a little mini, 1 or 2 day trip down there. And, you know, she manages to convince all the homies, including Wonjae, you know, to visit the Hanok place and stay there for a couple days. And apparently it's a little bit emotional for Wonjae because I guess his family lived or either stayed at the same Hanok. I think went to the same Hanok that the homies are at right now for a trip, for vacation. But it turns out, I guess Wonjae used to go there with his family on trips, but then his dad died when he was younger, then they stopped doing that. But, you know, that was when he was super happy and all that jazz, blah, blah, blah. So that dude that Mel goes on the first date with, that's like pretending to be the boyfriend, but is not, and the girl has a crush on him. Yeah, they're dating now. They announced that, and, you know, woo, that's so cool. And then also simultaneously, we find out that first dude is not rich, and is at SIA on a scholarship. Yeah, we find out, the Junhoon dude. That's his name, Junhoon. And then the girl he's dating, who had the crush on him, but now is dating him, Yura, I guess in a way, it compares, like, Mel to him as personality-wise, and she's like, that's probably why you're not a big fan of him, because he's too much like you. Which I kind of find funny, because that does happen sometimes. Sometimes people, you know, don't marry someone or are into someone exactly like them. You know, they like an opposite, but, you know. All right, and then Dad, you know, Mel eventually goes home from that trip, you know, trip was fun, great, all that jazz. And then Dad is all like, hey, surprise, it's almost Chuseok, and guess what, we gotta go to this dinner for Chuseok. Oh yeah, at some point they also visit the relatives too. Her father's parents. That was an interesting interaction. She has to be proper and prim and all that jazz. But she visits them later on too as well. But anyways, I guess for Chuseok, there's a dinner at the fancy rich towers they're at that, all the rich families and friends are going. And then eventually, along the course of this, Mel ends up telling her friends, I think probably Europe, most likely, about getting into the finals. The Mel mom end up fighting before this about her spending 700 USD in 2 days off of her dad's black credit card when she gets there, which is fair.
All right.
And that she apparently, because she found that she still had the card in her possession and didn't return back to her dad, and mom's all like, sweetie, no, you return the card back to your dad right now, because we're not doing this, which is fair, put discipline on your kids. Good job. We're not doing this all the time. We're not playing games like this. Do not hold on to your dad's black credit card just because he didn't ask for it back.
You don't hold.
She originally had it to buy school supplies and stuff like that. So, but yeah.
Yes. Other option. Yeah. Well, the credit card's not going to work tomorrow, so
that too as well. But I guess trying to build.
That's.
Yeah.
Then again, I can imagine it would be really hard to no, you can lose the thing. Just say you lost it. Because I'm like, I can imagine.
But then if you say that you lost it, most likely they'll cut off their credit card
if you lost it. Mm-hmm. No, but I'm saying you could say you lost. I would imagine that if you had a black card and you decided to cancel your black card, they could make it hard to get another black card. But you could always just say you lost it. So who knows?
True. Is it in those black cards? Actually, out of curiosity, I think are they made of metal typically?
They are. They're
so you have to ship them.
I don't know if they're full metal, but they're not made of the plastic of a normal credit card.
Yeah, so do you have to ship them back? Is that how that usually works?
I've never had one. I don't have that money.
I forget.
I feel like you have. I feel like
because you can't put them through a shredder like a normal card.
Destroyed. Somehow.
Yeah, you have to destroy it in some way, shape, or form.
I wouldn't be surprised if you would have to go to somewhere specific to have them destroyed.
Or you have to send it back to a certain place.
Yeah. But then again, do those have dates on them?
I think
like a regular credit card. I don't know.
This is a question for a rich person.
Where do they sell black credit cards? I need to know
more
this.
Money than we do.
I need to know this.
Then again, you'd have to have a date on it for make any kind of purchases.
Where do you buy this stuff? That's what I want to know. Anyway,
you get a black card?
Yeah, where do you get a black card?
I think you have to
You have to have a lot of money
they
first.
offer it to you. You don't. I don't think you apply for a black card. I think they offer you a black card. It's like going to those luxury stores and getting certain handbags. It's like you don't. You have to spend I think X amount of money or have an X amount of money in the bank. And then those fancy schmancy banks
will come
will
for
offer
you. The fancy
they
banks.
will offer it to you. Not
interesting.
You don't ask for it.
I have to research. I'm curious. I'll research this.
I don't know. I'll got black card money.
I am going to research that later. I won't do it now. Anyways, so they get to this, fancy rich Chuseok dinner, blah blah blah. Kimbom, the gay dude, and his family are late. And apparently his family had just found out that he's gay, and his dad's all like, I'm gonna ship your ass off to Boston for the rest of high school. And apparently his mom was pretty pissed off that the dad said that. So okay, it looks like mom's in his corner. Cool. So basically ends up the gay kid, Bom. Oh wait, his name's Kim Bom. That's why I keep calling him the gay kid, because I keep forgetting Bom's technically his given name. Okay, so Kim Bom, I'm gonna say his full name, gets drunk and makes an awkward toast, basically alluding to the family argument issues, all that jazz. Great. Publicly, you're doing that. Great. Mel's mom then lets her know about basically being like, yeah, I'm aware you're into this 1J, dude. You can't hide it from me. And her and the mom have a nice, cute little conversation. How the food is small, the people are, and the Bom's dad basically fucking sucks. And then eventually Mel and family go and have dinner at Chuseok, for Chuseok at dad's parents' place. The grandparents she's not necessarily super close with. Again, this is the second time visiting them. And in the process of this, she decides to go ahead and inform everyone there that she's going to go ahead and be an interior designer and do all that for her career. And then dad gets mad about her disrespecting the parents because, of course, the parents are all like, yes, lawyer, doctor, all that jazz. And dad's, of course, like, don't disrespect them, you know, in front of their house and all that jazz. Probably some weird cultural stuff that, you know, is tied up in all that. And basically her mom ends up talking to her, is all just like, like, hey, honey, calm down, you know, after they get back home and stuff like that. And that's when Mel lets it slip to mom that she's been reading dad's old diaries and stuff like that. And mom's just like, yeah, honey, you should probably put those away. Invasion of privacy a little bit.
Oh, just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Nothing inappropriate comes are in the journal. It's just putting that out there. But it's just like, it's kind of an invasion of privacy. And then one J's all like, I guess, call them. And it's like, yo, we tutoring today, girl. And, but like, also, we're going to go to this place as well to wear handbooks for our school projects, you know, soak up the cultural experience and all that shit. Mel at first, for some reason, claims it to be cultural appropriation, but Wonjae is like, don't be stupid. It helps the business for you to go ahead and walk in and wear these handbooks, and also you're Korean. Like, don't be dumb, girl. Like, I guess she's probably thinking of all the foreigners that do that, and he's just like, it's more so like an appreciation, girl. Like, it's not like they're making it sexy or making it uncomfortable and awkward. They're just wearing the outfit, chilling around, and these businesses get money off of that. So like, kind of like how they kind of, I guess, view, like, you know, explain how they view, like, oh yeah, wearing the nice old school dresses there, we kind of like that, so long as you're not being, you know, a dickhead.
I like her calling cultural appropriation on herself when she is Korean.
Yeah, he points that out to her hardcore. He's like, girl, calm down. It's like, you've been
Relax,
like,
fine.
maybe you're a little bit too much about the New York scene and stuff like that. Like, maybe New York's gotten to you a little bit too much, girl. But anyway.
Maybe we're like 7 layers in. Maybe we're meta-cultural.
We are. Maybe we are.
It's like, we're layers deep.
And then it comes to a point of like, is it actually that? I don't know. Anyways, they have that conversation, which I find it to be kind of funny, because I'm like, okay. They explore, of course, they go to the, you know, I think this is that thing where you go to that particular palace in Seoul where you wear the hanbok and you walk around, you know, and they have fun and all that jazz, you know, for their project and whatnot. And also, I guess, the homies show up there and basically tells it. That's where they tell. Did I put this out of order? No, I didn't put this out of order. I guess this is when she, you know, is all like, tells about everyone about dating Jun-hoon, which is that dude that Mel first dated. Although Wonjae, though, starts to become a little bit distant. Wonder why. Interesting. And then Mel, for some reason, decides to meet up for Aunt the next day. Aunt mentions that, again, the whole plotline of the singer story, wanting to be a singer, family of immigrants, blah, blah, blah. And basically it also came down to, like, mom deciding not to be a singer anymore because of the stability and the fact that she was pregnant with a kid now, was thinking, you know, like, okay, I gotta make sure I have a steady income. I can't do that anymore to guarantee with singing and all that jazz kind of deal. And Aunt Rebecca is basically all like, I totally wronged your mom because we were both at CUNY. They both went to the City University of New York, which I'm pretty sure, I forget, is there multiple CUNYs?
No, it's City University. That one's City University.
Okay, because the SUNYs are multiple.
SUNYs
are multiple. My parents went to a SUNY school.
SUNYs are multiple. I think there's only one CUNY. I think it's City, because there's like 15 universities in New York City just there. I
just want to make sure because I'm aware about the state universities.
They might be talking about multiple campuses.
Yeah. They didn't talk about multiple campuses. They just said CUNY. They just said CUNY. That's all.
Because I think that there's multiple because the problem with like universities in New York is that they're all like, there's like 18 buildings, but they're like across the city from each other at this point, because we're dealing with Manhattan. But I think for the most part, I think it's all under one. But I don't know. I didn't go to a city
Fair
school.
enough. Yeah, I know about the state schools though, because my parents both went to state schools, so that's how I'm aware about the New York State school network. But anyways, basically, you know, they both went, I guess the aunt and mom both went to CUNY, and then mom got pregnant, and then mom encouraged, you know, Rebecca to keep getting a degree. Mom eventually gave up singing and got a job, and then Aunt Rebecca dropped out of CUNY, moved to Seoul to sing, and then Aunt basically admitted they moved because Grandma wanted, it sounds like they partially like wanted to move, that her mom wanted to move back to also make up with her sister for her mother's sake, who's still residing in the States. So yeah, there's all that. As for Sophie or Sophia or whatever, she periodically calls Mel throughout the story. And they're all bonding. And then at some point they also have a tiff at the end where it's just like, oh, now Soph's all like, oh, now you're a rich bitch and blah, 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 and you've changed. And then Mel's all like, why are you getting mad at me about changing? It's like, both of them, it's like, okay, both of you are both antsy teenagers who haven't been able to talk to each other because you're on different time zones of the universe. And of course, like, it's a different living situation, so things are going to be different. People change over time, but, I guess Mel tries to talk to Wonjae to be like, let's go to Latte World to try to get a date out of him. And then I guess he doesn't interpret that as a date. And then it's all like, let's get the whole gang together. So the whole gang ends up going to Latte World because we got to get a Latte World reference in there. Got to get the premier indoor, outdoor, I think it's indoor theme park kind of situation going on. But yeah, Latte World does look cool. But it's so weird because it's like a big mega corporation that owns that. And they have a bunch of other food and stuff and whatnot. But yeah. And then, of course, going back to the whole Kim Bum storyline, he's all like, well, at the end of the day, it looks like my mom threatened to leave my dad. And that, frankly, which also makes sense because apparently his mom's family is more powerful in terms of influence and money than his dad's family is. So I guess that shut down that conversation of shipping him off to Boston. So. And then in the course of this, Mel sees that Wonjae's texting another girl. She automatically assumes it's a girlfriend, of course, because that's how that typically goes. The aunt comes to visit, and Mel admits to Mom about knowing about her whole past and stuff like that. And then Mom goes into the whole history essentially about her dad. And basically how her dad was not, and that his dad and that grandpa, or one of the grandpas, was not happy about dad working on Wall Street and getting fired after 9/11 and was cut off from the family at that time. Basically, Mel's dad was working odd jobs until the grandfather offered him to get a law degree and to work for the family firm in Korea. And because now that he has a kid, dad was all like, okay, yep, I'll just do that so I can get some money. Mom decided to keep working in the States and to keep Mel there and said that she wasn't going to go back to Korea. And once Mom made enough money, she stopped taking the dad's money and stayed on NYC until the recent decision to move to South Korea. So Mel finally finds out that whole story. And then, we're getting towards the end there. Basically, she ends up going to Wonjae's place at some point for a school project. And she asks him if he's dating at all. And he's all like, no, the fuck? Why are you thinking that? She's like, just curious, all that coy shit. And, they complete the work, and all that jazz. And then Mel ends up taking the midterms. And I guess after some point before the midterms results and stuff like that, her and Wonjae meet up again, secretly get ice cream and make out in the swings because, of course, teenage romance. Her and Sophia had the big mega fight of like, oh my God, you're rich now and you changed and blah, blah, blah. Mel, bonds with Mom, and Mom's all like giving sage age advice about how to deal with that. Mel finds out that she got a B in one class and a C- on another, on two of her exams, and it basically ruins her day. And her parents find out about it, and Dad's all like, a deal is a deal. We made the deal. You're supposed to get all A's. You're not going to Soho. And then, of course, Mel's now all sad, but of course she meets up with Yura to cheer up, and Yura decides to throw in there that she used to be a figure skater. Professional figure skater until she got a massive injury and never went back to that dream. And then Mel also decides to go watch the aunt perform, and the aunt's all like, and that be all like, hey, this is my dream now. Show your parents you care about the interior designing thing. Go get that project. And Mel decides ultimately, to go ahead and rearrange the furniture in the house and set up some school stuff, and then basically does this whole presentation thing to her parents about why she wants to do this, why she likes this, why she wants to do this thing. And her parents are convinced somehow, and Dad's all like, yes, let's go to the competition. So they all go on a family trip to NYC. Mel in person makes up with Sophie. They walk around and eat all the food. She's all like, oh my God, I miss the food in New York City, blah, blah, blah. She, of course, presents her project which her project is an interior design of a modernized hanbok inside a home. So, like, make it giving hanbok vibes inside the home, whether you can't change the building or not, kind of deal. Go back home. Mom was all like, you know what, Aunt? Let's rebuild our relationship. I'm gonna be your manager for your career and make you succeed, girl. And Mel finally goes on her first day with Wonjae. And he's all like, girl, we go ice skating, you know, can you be my girlfriend? She's all like, oh yeah, of course, because, you know, teenage shit. And also, we also get some resolution about the chick he was texting. And it turns out that was also an arranged date that he was supposed to do. And he's all like, nah, fuck that, I can't do that. So, there you go. And end of that story, I guess. And then she, you know, chilling with the parents at the end, and then she just finds out that she got the internship, and that's where it ends. So yeah, pretty much that's the whole story. Very, very, not much else to add on, I'd say. Pretty concise of what we got there. I feel like there's way more shit to add when it comes to the fantasy shit. The contemporary shit's like, it's straightforward shit.
It's pretty straightforward.
It's very
Can't really add much
straightforward.
to it. It's like, yep, that's what we got here. So I guess she's gonna get her internship. Maybe go to college there in New York, who knows? But she's gonna live out her interior designer dream.
In one of the 15,000 colleges in New York City she can go to. That will definitely have
but at least she got the internship, so there you go. She got the boy, she got the internship, she got the homies.
That's what we all want. That was the main plot here, the internship.
Yep.
That's the thing we're all for.
the nice fancy schmancy internship.
Everyone ready to get sad?
All right, let's get sad. Let's talk serious.
All right. So this book begins with a really mysterious, like, rich white man coming into, like, a house and finding a child, like, laying over his dead mother. Moments from death. Surprise.
Setting the mood.
So I'm going to talk about sets the tone.
It's definitely giving grimdark, that's for sure. It is dark, it is grim, it is Victoria depressed London.
I'm going to go through this book a little out of order because there's a lot going on, and for the most part, so at that point is what we're introduced to silver bars. So the way silver works in this, and the way the magic works in this book, is entirely translation based. So you have these enriched silver bars, which, known fact, are coming from, because this is all a critique of imperialism and it's a thinly veiled critique on, like, colonialism
stealing
and how rich powers just steal everything from other societies. The silver does not actually come from England. England does not produce silver because England doesn't produce silver in real life anyway. It comes from, specifically at this point, it's coming from China. And, because that's also everything else like that. It also gets into, like, real things. It talks about how opium, which is originally cultivated in, like, I believe, like, originally found in, like,
I think,
parts
like,
of
Pakistan,
the world, and that was being cultivated in Pakistan, but then they were using India as a place where they were growing it, that then gets sent to China as a method of, like, power and control. So it's talking how England uses all of these powers and against each other in certain ways. But at the beginning, you're introduced to silver bars. Silver bars are its, like, main method of mechanism. So it uses translation, where you'll put a word, because the other thing of this book is how language is extremely important and extremely valuable and extremely part of your identity, and how there are words that don't have translations. And so the way silver works is that you put two words that have, like, a similar meaning, but the magic comes from how those words are different. Like, because there are no direct translations of anything. So, for example, I'm trying to think of one. Like, for example, there's one where it's, like, the words for, I think it's, like, two words that mean, like, faster, and it can cause, like, steam engine. Everything in London essentially works on that. It's how lights turn on. It's how the bell towers turn on. It's how clocks work. Everything is sort of run entirely on silver enhanced magic. And the other thing, and the other way the translation institute makes money, is because you have to maintain them. They have to get refurbished. So you also need people to do that. So let me go through this chronologically. So then this guy, who has sort of been knowing this boy, and we find out later, and by find out later, it's not really a secret, because he always talks about Robin, who, it's very interesting, because Robin at some point says that, like, he has a real name. He has a Chinese name. He has a name that he's gone by. He's about, like, 9 or 10 when he gets taken. He's adopted. He has a name. And at some point, Professor Lovell, who is the guy that brings him over, is like, no, you need a name that people will actually call you by. You can't use that name. We never find out what his name is, which I found was really interesting because I also think that maybe he has also forgotten it because he never gets called by that name. So he just randomly picks the name Robin. Because it's just from, like, because as a child, he was being sent these books by who we find out later, Professor Lovell's his father. Because he is mixed, and that is also something that we come to learn about later, where he feels a lot of greater identity toward his Chinese heritage, mainly also because he is sort of the member of that core trio that is treated the least racist. Also because at a glance, he doesn't appear foreign, because he is mixed. But during his whole childhood, he would just be given books. So he learned English. He could read English really, really well. And then proceeded to... So he just picked Robin, I think out of Gulliver's Travels? Or, like, one of those, like, old-timey
like Robinson
adventure
Crusoe
novels.
or something like that.
Right.
I don't think it was
Maybe
Robinson
not that one.
Crusoe. I don't remember what it was, but it
Yeah.
was one of them. Yeah, it was just one of those novels.
We get like those. I get those vibe novels. Yeah.
Those like around the world.
Those
in
like
Yes,
lighter
those-
British
that kind of stuff.
fantasy-ish novels.
Yeah, which again you would send
Yeah.
a child. So when he leaves, he essentially has to learn. He's quote unquote already behind. So the father essentially just brutally teaches this kid ancient Greek and ancient Greek and Latin, which are two languages you sort of have to have a foundation in. And then as he grows up, he learns different things. Kid is like raised essentially with no love. The kid has no love, no compassion, no anything in his life.
Know
Poor
how to
child.
give love or compassion.
The dad does not acknowledge him as his son. Never does at any point in this novel, but you just find out that he is his father because of course he is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, they look the same. They look like father and son. Like, there's just bits there that are, so as it goes on, he then gets accepted to Oxford around the age of 17, I think. 17, 18, whenever that age. So he goes there and he meets essentially his other cohort of people, because the Translation Institute has, like, very small classes.
Mhm.
So it's only 4 kids. It is him, Rami, Victoire, and Letty. He and Rami get an immediate, understanding, and they are very close friends. Essentially, this whole time, there is this very period-appropriate racism happening, because they will treat, there's just, like, they are, Oxford at this time, it's not that they made a fictional Oxford, it is the same Oxford, just also with this massive, essentially, tower that's also there where all the translation is happening.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, and regular Oxford is still also where it is. So it's like they're dealing with other just essentially rich white men who are at Oxford, because at this point Oxford also doesn't, the Translation Institute is also the only place where women are allowed to be in schooling. So they also talk about translations. Everything has to be translated back to English. They don't really do, because they call them match pairs, which is the 2 words that are used for translation, and if you say them both, then the magic happens, essentially.
Magic.
The only rule is that you cannot use the word translate, because the word translate doesn't work. Apparently just causes a massive explosion,
Oh.
because it just doesn't work. They're like, you can't use 2 words for translate together, because I guess it's also talking about, like, the inherent, like, culturalness of translation and how, like, that'll just explode. It just causes a massive, which is, you know, the book is called Babel. We've
Mhm.
set up a way to
Yep,
make
yep.
things
They have a
explode.
tall tower in London.
There's a tower.
literally
Maybe it
have
goes
a
up to the sky,
Tower
who
of
knows?
Babel. I think I know how this book, like, I
Yep,
think
yep.
we can understand how this book ends.
We can guess as to how it will end.
Yes,
If you know
yes,
anything about the story about the Tower of Babel in the Bible.
Yes.
Yeah.
So as time goes on, we find out that, like, there's also inherent racism, like, within the Institute itself. Victoire, for example, is Haitian. So she is, not, her main thing is that she is here for French. The thing is, she also knows Haitian Creole,
Yeah.
which is also is which is similar to French, but is not French. And is just its own language, but the people there do not want to let her use it for any kind of anything, because they're like, no, it's not a worthy language. The only reason that they're actually using Mandarin is because they need Mandarin, and also they use Rami for, like, Arabic, and all the other things is because they need that because match pairs that are getting too common stop working. So things that are like taken from other languages like Spanish and French and all of that are starting to become less desirable and useful because it's just things that are becoming parts of society, because English does take words from other languages and adopt it into itself. And it's just, this book's real dense, guys. I'm trying to explain it as easily as I can, and it gets confusing. Mm-hmm. It's a lot. Also, this book just includes a lot of random Chinese, because it will just tell me how to say them, and I'm like, okay, great, I like it. Cool. This book is very well written. I just don't know if I'm smart enough to explain it. I might not be, to be honest. So, essentially, as time goes on, we also find out about the Hermes Society. The Hermes Society are all ex-Babel students who realize, essentially, that they are being used to further the powers of the Empire against their own best interests and the best interests of their people. So it includes, like, who we find out is Griffin, who is Robin's older half-brother, who was, like, essentially him from before that was, like, they're just sort of seeking to just steal things. They're stealing the bars from Babel and taking them and just, we never find out fully what they are doing because, like any good secret society, we don't actually know, we don't see, like, a headquarters of, like, everybody that's there. We only see, like, bits and pieces. And we get that they're stealing and they're taking them other places and helping with certain other revolutions, but we don't fully know what's the foray here. But, there's also the journey of Robin, who begins the story, like, very conflicted, as you would be in this situation, because in theory, Babel and, like, the British have given him everything. Like, he was this poor kid from China taken away and taught language and taught reading and taught all of these interesting things. But in reality, they are also just essentially using him and will never view him as any kind of equal to them in any capacity. So we're dealing with all of that. He sort of he's part of the Hermes Society for a while, and then he decides to leave and doesn't want to be a part of it because he's like, well, I'm like, what if we change the system from the inside, da-da-da-da, and all that other stuff. Then, at some point in their, like, third year, it's a thing where they take all of the students and they go on an international trip to do work for the Translation Society, and they end up going to Canton, China. And this is where the story takes a turn because they realize, like, what's going on. They realize that the British just do not view the Chinese at all as people. The Opium War is happening. Robin goes into an opium den and realizes the absolute insanity that is happening and that is being caused to his own people. And he's like, oh, I can't be a part of this. And then, so, essentially the main project here is that there is resistance of China to allow the British to essentially have free reign of export. They're like, no, you cannot import opium into our land. They're like, no. And the British are like, but it's our right to do so. And they're like, no, it's not. Get the fuck out. It's not, though. And it isn't, because but they are a whole lot. They're out here, essentially, at the end of the book, end of that part, Robin was just talking to it's the first time Robin's actually been able to speak with another Chinese person in years. And he's talking to them and he's like, do you think that he ends up just being very honest with them, and then that causes the government personnel to essentially just destroy all the opium that they'd upholded. They just, like, blow it up. And they're like, well, so essentially Babel immediately makes them leave. They're like, you fuck this. And so when they're on the boat, Robin kills his dad. Because his dad and him are having an argument, and he has the silver bar that he got from Griffin, that Griffin had apparently in a moment of rage used to kill another person that had betrayed the Hermes Society, but he uses it to kill his brother, to kill his father. Then Remy, Victoire, and him dispose of the body. This is the other part where this makes it very Dark Academia, because that is the main thing I've learned about Dark Academia. Dark Academia always involves a murder.
A murder some way.
Whether or not it is, like, a murder that, for example, is not, that is, like, a murder mystery, doesn't necessarily have to be a murder mystery. This is not a murder mystery. We know who did it.
Mm-hmm.
He seems okay with it.
Lovely.
But, yeah. So then they go back to, England. They all meet up with the Hermes Society. essentially they all find out from old, like, letters that Professor Lovell has is that there is a war that's about to happen. Like, they are trying to start a war with China. And they're like, well, we have all the silver. The war will be over in 5 minutes and we will have full control and essentially be able to just import opium to our heart's desire and take all of the silver for ourselves. So they go to the Hermes Society, they meet all the Hermes Society members, which we find out at some point that Remy and Letty have already been part of the Hermes Society, Remy and Victoire. Letty finds out about this and is pissed, but they're like, you don't get it. And she does not understand why she wouldn't. And this is where I think a lot of people's, like, whole understanding goes to, is, like, Letty is a rich white lady from England.
Mm-hmm.
They are rightfully telling her, you do not understand our conflict. Because even during this whole time, she is still fully on the side of Babel of, like, but what if, like, we just work from the inside, we follow along, this can't be what's happening, these are good people. But she never fully understands what the other three are going for as being non-English people. Specifically not white.
Mm-hmm.
Because she doesn't get it. And that's where I get the white woman feminism / you know what I'm talking about when I say that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's where I'm getting. So she betrays them.
Of course.
Oh, Lord.
Sends him off to the police. And also shoots Ramy.
Lord.
And kills him. So that happens. So they're on the run. They then essentially take Babel hostage with, like, 5 other kids. Because, as they learn, they're like, throughout this whole time, it becomes sort of a conflict of peace versus violence. Which is where the title comes from. Because Griffin is of the opinion that, like, violence is necessary because they won't listen to us otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've been trying to talk forever and no one's listening. So we have to use some sort of violence to our means, to our ends. So essentially, at some point they go to, I'm skipping over hundreds of pages as I go through
other
this.
things that are also
I'm
it's fine.
skipping so much. Like, they're at some point in jail getting, like, there's a match pair that just essentially makes you feel your body is, like, ripping itself apart. And they use that to them in jail, and I'm like, that sounds awful. So essentially, because this is an institution of learning, they are able to very easily, with one gun, take the entire tower by siege, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, once that happens, Britain starts falling apart. Because they cannot get any silver, then they can't fix the silver, and they also start breaking this thing called resonance rods, which are how, essentially, if you have, like, one main rod with, like, match pairs on it, you can cause all the other silver to just work in tandem, but if you destroy it, all of that stops working. So, like, the sewers aren't working anymore, the lights are cut off,
Jesus.
The bells have stopped ringing, the world is falling apart, and they can't fix anything either, because they also have all of the, like, they call them, I forget what they call them, but they call them, they have these, like, massive, books that just have all of the translation work that any of these people have ever done for, like, many languages. So, as time goes on, we're talking, like, the British Army gets involved. They're talking, like, they're trying to stop everything from happening. And in the end, essentially, they make the choice to destroy the tower. They're like, this is our only option. And they, use the whole translation method and bring the tower down. And the only person left living at the end is Victoire, who decided to leave.
Uh-huh.
Everyone else, and also Letty, who is somewhere being the bitch
being
that she
terrible.
Is.
So Victoire decided to bounce
She's
before they decided
awful.
to mass kill themselves in a...
Victoire decided, was like, I don't believe in violence. I don't think this is a good idea. I wanted to live through this. At the end of the book is actually a chapter about her, because she also talks about being, essentially a slave her whole life, and she's like, I want to be known, I want to live, I want to grow up and, like, be better for my people. Like, it's a whole other thing situation. She does end up, I think, going to America, which is a bad time for her, considering it's the 1830s and she's black. But, you know, we'll see. This
But
does leave
where,
it
though?
slightly
Like, are we
open
talking
to-
Louisiana, or are we talking
we don't
North?
We don't specify. Whatever was the first
I
ship she
guess.
could find.
Granted, she
Whatever
could
was
also...
the first thing she could find, but that's... Like, essentially, the ending of this book is other than the epilogue, is the tower falling on top of Robin.
Mm-hmm.
Which, again, for a book called Babel...
You
yeah,
know,
of
that
course
was
that was
about how
gonna
it
end.
was gonna go.
Yeah. But the other thing I would say about this book is I don't fully, but I also don't know if that's maybe the point. I don't know what this book's stance on violence is.
Fair enough, yeah.
Fair.
I don't know what this book's stance on revolution is. And I don't
Didn't
know
really
if this
give
book
any,
has
if it
one.
was based on
I wouldn't be
revolution, did it
surprised
give
if this was just-
revolution a
If
good
it was,
light?
like, honestly, if there was a theme that they were gonna leave purposefully kind of, like, vague, I feel like that feels correct.
The necessity of violence for revolution, because in a way, that was the only way people took them seriously.
Right.
But also, it did lead to everybody dying, except one person who didn't believe in violence.
Right. So, you know.
So at the end of the day, it is a very murky... I like that about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a murky... It lets you come to your own conclusions, whether or not it was correct. And whether or not you can destroy the symptoms... The system, from the inside, or whether you do need an outside force as a way to destroy it. I also decided not to talk about any of the interpersonal relationships in this, because they are really good. I like the core friend group a lot. At some point, Letty is a good person, but when confronted with the realities that they're not playing along with her little system, she very much does not like it. But I've also completely skipped over the entirety that is the other theme of this book, which is the power dynamic between the elite and the poor. Because another thing that the resonance rods have done is, and the silver has done, is make many of the poor obsolete. Because there's also this revolution of people being like, we have no jobs, we have no ability to make food. Because, for example, an example they use in the book is, like, looms and stuff. The rods have made it super fast to make textile, which means that people that make clothes are out of jobs.
Is this like her subtle commentary on AI, potentially?
They are unable to feed themselves. I think it's a subtle commentary on the Industrial Revolution, more so. Which was also happening at the same time, because they're also talking about steam. They also talk about everything. This is a very much it's like workers' rights, strikes, racism, oppression, the lower class, the upper class, the British colonies, all of them. And also just the indifference of the white man, because none of the white men ever even begin to imagine that what they did is wrong. None of them will ever admit it, and none of them ever... The only person... There is one professor who is in this a bunch, and she does end up being very sad about what she has been a perpetrator of, and ends up also dying in that tower destruction. But that's really, like, the only white person that comes to a conclusion that they were wrong. Which, you know, this book's a lot to go through.
Feels very, very dense. So dense.
It's real... the footnotes are also both, like, things that are insightful into the relationships between the characters. Like, there's footnotes that will just be... that are one, world building, two, give you... because the book is told from third person, but the narrative very much sticks to things that the characters would know and would be telling each other. The footnotes are where you get random things that are just like, here's history of the character that you wouldn't know from the narrative. Also, here is history of real people you wouldn't know from the narrative. Here's also world building I included in the footnotes. There's a lot of footnotes in this book. So it includes and also here is just random, thing with, like, it's just random things. Like, I flipped to a random page. This footnote's talking about, really randomly, how in the mid-18th century, Babel scholars were really into astrology. And it goes on for, like, two more sentences
just a lot of that, yeah.
Just, like, a lot of random things. Here, it also just talks about the origins of words. The English night and the Spanish noche, for example, are both derived from Latin nox.
Damn.
Like, it talks about etymologies. It talks about, language. A lot of my favorite parts of this book were them just talking about language and how language evolves and how language influences each other and all of that other stuff. But you gotta be in the right mental space. It took me, like, a month to read this book.
I mean, that makes sense. It feels like it's a lot to take in at one period of time.
And then it just sends you down, like, a whole thought about, like, imperialism and also the parallels of today, and also how we live in a very connected society, but also what is like they get into a full like discussion about the merits, and they don't come to a conclusion on it, but the merits of a spiritual translation of putting in using doing a direct translation, a word as close to a word for word versus changing it to keep the spirit of it. And then they talk about the pros and benefits of both of those things, which again, as people who run a podcast very much on only foreign things,
basically,
I have also my own thoughts on.
I mean, it's interesting too, because and also this book, how you're describing it, also reminds me about how it's a lot easier to critique another power or government or influence than the one that you're comfortable from, in a way. Because I feel like, because this author is from China, correct?
This author, it was born in China, but was raised in, came to the U.S. when she was 4.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
This author is always referred to as Chinese American.
Okay.
She has.
So I was about to say, if she was directly from China, then I'd be
fully educated in the West.
Okay, gotcha.
She is getting all of these Chinese, not saying anything about those programs everywhere, but all of her Chinese studies are from Oxford and Yale and these Western institutions.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which obviously now are actually being taught by people of those cultures, as opposed to in this book where they're just being taught by white people. But
this Rami dude is interesting too, because he's Muslim, but he's also from Kolkata.
Yes,
India is a very. I don't think people realize how diverse India is too. The fact that they have over potentially 400 languages.
Lot about Rami is also very much a. The thing with Rami dies before much of the revolution comes forward, but he's also a very interesting character that never chose, because Robin in many ways chose to adapt to which is the two ways, chose to adapt to his environment, and the fact that he was mixed did allow him to do that a little bit more than obviously Victoire or Rami, who are just Indian and Haitian respectively.
But it sounds worth it.
It's very good. I very much recommend it. It is just not an easy read. At least for me it wasn't, but I also don't really...
Is this an adult or is it young adult?
It's adult. It's adult.
Yeah, I was about to say, this sounds like it should be adult.
This is not a young adult book.
It's not... Or really, I should say there's teen, and then there's an adult who happens to be a younger adult kind of story. And this feels like an adult,
this is an adult book. This is the critiques of capitalism alone.
But they're dealing with 20-something-year-olds, though, too.
Well, yeah, but also adult books can deal with children. Again, we keep somehow coming back
it's
to
very college age.
It is about 10-year-olds, and that's an adult. You can have an adult book that has children as the main characters, and I wouldn't recommend it to a child. All right, so those are our books.
That's been the books by
I would recommend all
American authors, everybody. Yeah, all of them. Very good.
Yeah, pretty solid.
Much better time with this than we did past books we have read for this podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So we are available on all major podcasting platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We also have a YouTube channel where we post all of our episodes along with occasional fun clip videos as well. And with that, we will see you guys in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.